Hi, I'm John Grooters. The toll of the COVID-19 virus is obviously far greater than even the number of people who have been sick, even the number of people who have died. In many parts of the world, the shutdown of the economy has led directly to starvation and out-of-control suicide rates. Meet Hajin Jang, one student, one Christian, who is doing something about it on No Shame.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid, no shame of the gospel of his name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid, no shame.
So this podcast is now over 90 episodes we've produced, I have had conversations over these 90 episodes with athletes and actors and authors, producers, musicians, newsmakers, but I've never talked yet to a student till today. That's going to change. Hajin Jang is it a third-year student at Hope College, Hajin? Is that right?
I'm entering my senior year now.
Going into your
this
fourth
fall
year?
semester.
Okay.
Yep.
And so Hajin's a student at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, which is where our company is located. Hajin's a native of South Korea, studying audio production. And today, I believe, you're coming to me from Thailand. Where are you, Hajin?
I'm in Bangkok, Thailand.
All right,
Yep.
He's in Bangkok. So I want to welcome you to the podcast and thank you for staying on. We are like 11 hours time zone difference right now, so it's morning here, late night there. But I want to give you all the backstory a little bit of why we're having this podcast today, and it's a memory that's interesting. So Hajin's a student at Hope College, and he comes walking into our offices one day based on an introduction from a mutual friend. And I was in the middle of something, and we had a couple of minutes to talk, and he just introduced himself, and it was nice to meet him, and he was kind of interested in audio production and wondered if we had any internship opportunities or opportunities for a student working audio. I didn't really know, but we talked for 2 seconds, and I looked out the window, and it was pouring rain that day, and I'm turning around to get back to my editing machine, which is right behind me here, and I'm like, oh, this poor guy's gonna have to walk home in the pouring rain. I said, did you walk over here? And he said, yeah, he had. So, well, let's run in the car. If you're going back to campus, it's not really far. It's maybe 6 or 7 blocks, but in the pouring rain, you would have been soaked. And on that little car ride, 6 or 7 blocks is a chance to get to know somebody just a little bit better than if, you're just not getting that opportunity. So we met fairly briefly. Fast forward, we get a job to produce a film, and we decide we want to shoot this film. It's a film about a North Korean story called Songchul, North Korea. And we're going to produce it for the International Day of Prayer. It's a short film. It'll be like 6 or 7 minutes. There'll also be a longer cut, about 14 minutes. So we're now in pre-production, planning to go to South Korea, a country I'd never visited before, a language I didn't speak very well or at all. And anyway, Hajin just came to mind, and I said, remember that student that came in? I wonder if there's any chance he might be interested in joining our crew for this trip. It'd be really wonderful to have a translator with me all the time. And so from that one meeting, believe it or not, we called Hajin, and like 2 days later, he's on an airplane carrying heavy batteries, flying to Seoul, South Korea, and has to find. Seoul is huge. How many people live in Seoul, Hajin?
Ooh, that's hard. I personally don't know how many people.
Maybe 10 million. It's a huge city. And we were already there, and he shows up and actually finds the tiny little bed and breakfast on the tiny little alley. Who knows where we were, but he knows the city. And Hajin joined us, and then we had about a week or so in pre-production in Seoul, and then we traveled to the very southern tip of the country where we worked for about a week in a studio. Anyway, Hajin was there to work on the audio team, but before that, you worked with me, and you kind of helped orient me to Korea a bit. I remember we took a couple of walks, and you introduced me to a great Korean barbecue, which to this day is very, that's a specialty over there, right? A Korean barbecue, which I would have never found without you. And then, we worked on some new equipment together. We put together, so we had some new gyroscopes and some new lenses, and we had just some new recorders, things we all needed to kind of assemble before we got into production. And then we had a pretty cool week in production. What are your memories of that week, Hajin? What did you do?
Well, we met a lot of people. We met people from different departments of the crew. We met the Voice of the Martyrs in Korea, which was really interesting. So I was really impressed with all the work they were doing and for the people of North Korea. And I remember just how busy we were. And I remember the times when I was working with you and building the movie camera, and we were like trying to get the equipments to work. Yep, it was really great experience.
The film we're talking about, if you're listening to the podcast and you want to watch it, it's available. It's called Songchul, North Korea, and you can see it if you go to persecution.com/IDOP, which stands for International Day of Prayer, or on YouTube if you just type in Songchul, North Korea, SANG-CHUL. It really is a very powerful, true story of a short film that really is interesting about how the violence and the persecution that comes upon the Christians in North Korea, if they even so much as glance at a Bible. Children are taught that the missionaries, if you ever talk to them, they'll kill you and they will eat your liver. And all kinds of this disinformation is passed along. And in fact, I just found out this week that the Voice of the Martyrs in South Korea for years has been doing these balloon launches where they'll put Bibles in helium balloons when the wind is favorable. And it's a way to bring Bibles into North Korea. And when the helium falls out, they kind of know where they're going to fall and people get Bibles. Well, they're getting cracked down on that now, even in South Korea. They've made that illegal. And so our friends who are going to continue to do it have said, well, this is what God's called us to do. And if they decide that it's illegal and they have to throw us in jail, then we'll faithfully go to jail. These are the people that we know, Hajin. I mean, it's not an easy time to be a Christian in many places in the world. But in North Korea, it's an impossible time. So the love that they show those North Koreans and getting them the hope is incredibly courageous. So
It's amazing.
that was a great little film project, and we really appreciated having you on it. And the department that you worked with on that team was audio, right? You worked on the audio team with our team.
I was the boom. I was in charge of the boom mic.
The boom mic, and I believe, it was a short film, but we were recording 4 different kinds of audio. We were recording stereophonic microphone to kind of create stereophonic atmospheres. Then, if you were working the Sennheiser boom was obviously a key part of any film. We also run wirelesses on the dialogue people in case they happen to turn away from the boom. So the audio department's busy.
Yes, it was all new to me. I've never been on a set before, but Paul was really patient with me and taught me really great stuff.
Well, and it's cool. Paul Wesselink here at Grooters is our sound engineer, and Paul works both in the field and also in the studio. So when he's in the field, he's extra motivated to get clean, solid sound, because otherwise it's a pain in the neck for him to have to fix it in post. Sometimes, there's ADR and things, but a film like this, a lot of it's in Korean. The dialogue was all in Korean. There was an interview that was in Korean, then there's a voiceover in English with an accent. So it feels very real. The film feels very authentic, and it's a true story, and we tried to tell it as powerfully as we could. The film that came out that won Best Picture last year, I'm blanking on the title of it, that was filmed in South Korea. About the family who was the servants.
The Parasite?
Parasite. That's right.
Yeah.
I blanked on the name. Parasite came out right after we had filmed Songchul, and it was a great film, won Best Picture, and I'm like, it looks a lot like our movie. It was sort of similar in its style, and it was just longer. But Hajin, No Shame has always kind of explored topics at the center, intersection, we say, of faith and culture. And after we shot this film together, you had an internship in Australia, right? Tell me a little about that.
So my internship in Australia isn't that interesting as the one I had in Holland. So at first I was planning to get involved with the Hillsong team in Australia, and I was hoping to produce an album with them, the plan was progressing, but apparently Hillsong wasn't able to provide, will be able to consider it as an internship. So they wouldn't give me the opportunity. So I had to sign up for a last minute internship, whatever the school had to offer me. So I actually interned at a financial company called SAS. And the director there, the person who runs it, is Canna Campbell, and she also has her own YouTube channel, and she helps people make wiser financial decisions. So I was in charge of their media stuff. I was taking videos for her, and I was also editing them in Premiere Pro while also taking photography, bag photography, and for her house. So I actually got to use a lot of knowledge that I've gained from my previous internship, which is at the Grooters, and I was able to apply it, and it was a really nice internship, small internship at Sydney, Australia.
Now, we're recording today. It's the first day of July of 2020. And so obviously, while you were over in Australia, the COVID situation came about. How did that change things for you?
Uh, it changed a lot. I mean, my study abroad program was totally unexpected. Like, we were just about 2 weeks into school, and then they had to end the program. So I came back home right away, the day after they terminated the program. So I pretty much lost all my time and the projects I was going to work on in Sydney.
So what'd you do next?
What did I do next? So I came back home in Thailand, and I had to quarantine for 14 days, as the rule says. And then I decided to get more involved in my church and my parents' missions. So the first thing I did was, after coming back here, is help set up a Zoom service. That's when the Zoom started booming across the world, and all these churches needed an online service. So I helped set up my church, the Zoom online service for every Wednesday night and Sundays. So I was using my little USB connected mic and my camera and my laptop to help our church, because our church isn't that big. So there aren't a lot of people who knows a lot of technology. So yeah, I was able to help my church continue with their online services.
Well, we should have talked. I mean, I've had to do the same thing, and you know, I lead worship at a small church in a nearby town, and like you, and like everybody, we had to explore what are we going to do when we aren't allowed to get together anymore. And there are a few technical things that you make a few mistakes on the early weeks, and then hopefully they get better over time, and the sound gets better, and the flow gets better. And I've been along that same journey, and I gotta say, I mean, it's worked. Like, this technology has allowed our community to stay very in touch, to keep moving in the same direction. Had we had the same pandemic 10 years ago, I think, we just wouldn't have seen each other for 3 or 4 months. I mean, it would have been just an over, but the internet has given us this chance to connect, even a chance to do a live video record with you 11 hours away and from Bangkok, Thailand to Michigan. So I'm pretty appreciative of the people that have been building technology, that it has allowed human connection in a day where human interaction is sort of being, socially distanced farther and farther apart. So you did that for your church. So your parents, let me just backtrack. Your parents are from South Korea. You have a South Korea passport, but they've been missionaries now in Thailand. For how long? What are they doing? What's the story?
For over 30 years. So they've been in Thailand for over 30 years. I was actually born in Thailand. So technically I haven't really lived in Korea. I've just visited every once in a year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So what my parents do here is obviously they preach and they spread the gospel of Christ. They go out in the streets, go out into these villages, surrounding villages around. And then, so my mom started out by just carrying a big piece of mat and a Bible and some pictures with a big board with pictures of stories from the Bible, actually. And then it contains different stories. And then what she would do, how she started out, was she would go into these villages around late afternoon. That's when all the students come back. And then she would start preaching and calling the kids to come. And then the kids would come around, sit around my mom. My mom would tell stories about the Bible. And then that grew to like how the adults started coming listening because they were like, "Oh, what is this? It's very interesting." And you see all these kids all sitting around in the playground while my mom is preaching the gospel, and my dad was at the back praying for people, and then I was there playing the guitar for the kids, and then it was just a nice little gathering, spontaneous gathering. And then she started doing it weekly, and then it just grew, and the gospel started spreading across all these neighboring towns and villages.
And you were there with your guitar? I did. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How old were you?
When I started it, I was around 12, 10 or 12, I believe. Yeah.
You know, my dad, Hajin, my dad's a pastor as well. And I can remember being a young guy, and he would. I grew up in Arizona, and he would do winter retreats up in the mountains in the snow, and a lot of times he was the speaker. And same as you, I mean, as a young guy, I brought my guitar and was just kind of included in that whole thing. And I mean, I can't say for sure all the impact that has had on my life, but I mean, it was my parents' thing, but I enjoyed being a part of it, and I felt like I was kind of being respected because I could do an important thing. Did you enjoy being part of this, or did you dread it?
Well, first off, there was a point in my life where I actually dreaded.
Yeah.
Because it was like a Thai church, and our church, like when I was growing up, I like didn't speak Thai as fluently. So I always wanted to go to the Korean church downtown. That's where all my school friends were going. They're all Korean. And then since there were more like kids my age there, I was like, oh wow, I really want to go hang out with them instead of being at a church where I really can't get along with adults, or it's all in Thai, or there aren't any kids around my age. So it was quite lonely, but as I grew up, I realized the importance of my role and how much I was able to serve in this community. So yes, it played a significant part in my life.
You know, and this has kind of been a theme for you in some ways. You've kind of been a fish out of water a lot of times in your life. So now you're a Korean raised in Thailand, and now you're in America, and even over here, you know, you seem to me like you adjust really well, and I think you're well liked, but it's definitely, you're out of your own cultural element. What's that like for you?
I guess I feel like I'm not tied to something.
Right.
As much as it sounds like, oh, you don't have a country you can call your own, but at the same time, I'm able to adjust in different cultures and know how different cultures work and the differences between them. So it's weird, but I guess it's really hard to word it.
How old are you, Hajin?
I'm 22.
22. So you know, as a 22-year-old, you've seen a lot more of the world, I'm sure, than most people at age 22, or many people in their entire lifetime. So you have obviously spent time in the West, obviously spent time in Asia. Now you've been in Australia, and I know even when you were here, you guys would travel a lot. If you had a week off, you were off to Canada, right? You seem like you're a bit of an explorer.
Yes, I love exploring different countries and seeing parts of the world just to widen my perspective in life.
Yeah, there's a certain adventuresome spirit that I've seen in you, and also just sort of a confidence that those things don't frighten you. Now, when you got back to Thailand, you and I talked on the phone last week, and one thing that I have sort of come to slowly realize, I was on the phone with a pastor in India a couple of weeks ago, and he said the situation here is dire, and people are starving to death, and they're committing suicide in droves because they just do not know where their next meal is coming from, and they don't want their children to see them suffer. And he said the people here are much more terrified of starvation than they are of the COVID-19 disease. And that line really stuck with me. Really, that would seem to be a horrible reality. And the reality is that COVID-19 and the shutdown of industry and the shutdown of travel meant that what meager living they were earning as day laborers or as wage earners was gone. And when that dried up, also some of the supply chains dried up. And there weren't government programs that offered everybody, food stamps or unemployment benefits or PPP. And
Right.
I'm like, okay, we have a hardship in the West, and it's still a hardship, but there's starvation. And then I heard that's happening in Guam, and I talked to a woman from Peru, same story. So now you've come back to Thailand, and tell me what has been going on with your church and this pandemic, how it's affected the people in Bangkok.
So, well, to start off, our neighboring villages around where I live, are pretty. It's like for lower class people in Thailand. So there are people who work day by day. They're factory workers. They're maids. They go clean place. But then these are the people who earn a day to live another day. And then since the COVID has affected the whole world, and obviously in Thailand, people were in lockdown. There were no jobs. We started hearing how, like, yeah, some people are committing suicides. Some people don't know what to do with their life anymore. People are starving. People don't know, like, they can't pay any bills or house rents anymore. So what got our church to be involved in this food mission that we're doing right now is it started off with my parents, when my mom went to pay off the church rent, because we're renting out a small space in this center building. We were really short of money because we weren't having any services, and our supply from Korea, our sponsors from Korea got cut off because the churches there were affected as well. So we were also really short. So my mom went to talk to the office people asking if they can cut off the price or push it off until we can actually pay it off. And then she realized all the difficult situation we were in. And then she thought of all the other people who were affected by it, who might have been in a worse situation than us. And the second reason how we started this food mission is
Just let me make sure I understand. So did the church's rent got abated for a while or got postponed? Is that what happened?
yes, in the end they were able to postpone it for us. So
Oh, great. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
yeah.
So the building can stay in its place, but the rent can be pushed off a little bit. Okay.
And the second reason is Korean churches, we usually do lunch after our service. That's one thing I haven't seen in the West. But the church provides lunch for the congregation after the service. But since we weren't doing our service anymore, we had this money that we always put aside for the lunch. So, and that's only like around $50. And we feed around 35-ish people. So we had this money, and then what my mom and dad discussed was, instead of just leaving that money to be, let's use it to help those who can't actually afford food. So it led to us coming up with this food missions that is happening every Wednesday in the morning to noon.
So you said, all right, we've got a little bit of money set aside, $35 to $50, which was feeding 35 people. That's about $1 per person. It's a pretty good deal. And then you thought, all right, but there's people around us who have lost their day wages, and so we'll just put out some food on Wednesday mornings. So how did that go? Tell me about it.
So our first week, we weren't expecting much. We just told around the neighboring village saying, hey, we'll be sharing food on Wednesday. And then before we knew it, we realized we actually needed more supplies, because around our first week, around 500 people showed up. And obviously $50 is not enough. So my dad took out from his account, and he paid $50 more to provide for the remaining people who wanted food as well. And then we were like, wow, this is actually gonna get big. So we started sending out newsletters. I mean, to our like sponsors around saying, "Hey, we're starting this mission. Would you be interested or just pray for us?" Like we weren't really asking them for money. We were just sending out prayer letters, I guess. And people who were touched were actually sending donations to us. And then and it just kept growing from then on. Like second week, we had 600 people. The third week, 700. And by now, we're feeding thousands every week.
What do you? What's on the menu?
So yeah, I actually have pictures that I shared with Shelby, but maybe I can screen share
Yeah, it'd be great.
this for you. Okay. So this picture. Oops, it's loading. But we have this little lunchbox. I'm not sure if you can see it right over here. But we've got this little lunchbox and we have rice on one side. And then we've got meat, vegetable and meat that has been cooked, put on top with some eggs or a fried egg, and then we close it. And that's one meal box that we give out. And then we put in 1 or 2 pieces of fruit and a snack in. And that's the lunchbox we give out to people, each person.
All right, take your screen share off. We'll go ahead and we'll edit
Okay.
in these pictures because I want to see. It's interesting to see this because it looks like it's pretty good. I mean, that looks delicious. Actually, you're not just sort of throwing them out a dried bone. You're making a real meal.
Oh, yeah, no.
And you're saying now over 1,000 people are coming on Wednesdays.
Yes.
So this is amazing. What are you doing, Hajin, in this process? You must be involved. What's your job?
So our whole church actually got involved. Cause every Tuesday night we have to go buy all these foods and the lunchbox foam boxes, and we have to print out these little tags that we put on the box that says "God is love," and it's from we put our church name, and then there's a picture of 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, which signifies how we actually started off this mission. But my role is actually I'm at the back, sometimes putting rice into the foam boxes, or I'm like sticking the tags onto the foam boxes, or sometimes I'm at the front giving the food to the people as well. So I'm pretty much all over the place.
So that same guy that at age 12 was playing the guitar while mom was teaching Bible stories to kids is today serving as a cook and as a servant, and probably some cleanup is involved, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And you're just doing all this work, and it's probably hot. Is it hot there?
Oh yes. I'm not sure if what it is in Fahrenheit, but it actually reached 45 degrees Celsius.
Oh, double it and add 30. So there, do your math. That's 120, folks, in Fahrenheit. Oh my
Yep.
goodness.
So it's in that heat. People actually stand in line for the food, since the line is really long, and then we're all out. All our church community is out there in the heat, cooking food, and making this happening.
So, the gospel is, giving a cup of cold water, and here you are, feeding the hungry. How are people receiving this, and especially people who are not Christian in any way? What's been the reception like from these people?
So at first, when we used to go out and preach the gospel, people would be like, "Oh, they're Christians. What are they doing here?" Because Thailand is mostly Buddhist. It's like 99% Buddhist, I believe. And so people would always look down on us. But now with the church community helping the communities out, they were actually saying, "Oh, look, it's Jesus's food. Let's go get Jesus's food." Or it's like the church is giving us food, free food. They were actually very welcoming of us. And now, whenever we go around the street, people are like, "Oh, they're Christians. They're the nice people. They're the good people." And then they acknowledge us and they actually greet us first as well. So there's that change.
Wow. I hope you're listening to this podcast today or you're watching it and you're getting a chance to hear this story from my friend Hajin, because it's so encouraging to hear this story. We're going through an awful lot in this culture and in many cultures right now. And I don't know, how much have you guys in Thailand been affected or paid attention or give a hoot about in the West? We've had protests and riots, and there's just a lot of social upheaval going on right now. People are very angry. People are lashing out, speaking out. There's probably never been a time when America was maybe less stable. Maybe there was more hatred and violence than what's going on right now. Do you guys see that over in the East?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, can you rephrase your question?
Well, has there been the news of what's going on in America, which has been nightly protests and a lot of rioting, burning of cities? It's been dominating our life for the last 2 months. Have you seen any of that in Thailand, or has that not made it onto your radar screen?
It's not really, it didn't really made it to the Thai people here. I mean, for me, I'm staying updated with all my friends who are currently in the West, but some people here, like in international schools, since they somewhat have a connection with America, they would see these kind of news. But to these Thai people, they really don't know what's going on in the West.
Well, in these times of both the COVID virus and then some of this other social unrest, to see the church, and in your case, Hajin, a small mission church of 30 people that has been faithfully planted, I would say, by your folks for all these years, showing the world what it means to be followers of Christ. I mean, to me, and the reason I thought we'd really wanted to do this podcast with you today is what your church in Bangkok is doing and other Christians are doing, like I said, in India, I know in Peru. You guys are an absolute inspiration to all of us who follow Christ, and to say that you are there. And we really are going to, I believe we're going to answer to the Lord, what did you do when you saw my children starving? And your program with your sticker of the loaves and fishes and the God is love on each lunchbox is exactly what I want us to be known for. And I don't know how when you had enough money to feed 30 people and now you've got 1,000 people, I mean, the grocery stores aren't giving you food, are they?
So it's amazing how we get through by each week. At this point, we're actually spending 500 to 600 per week just to make this happen and feed 1,000 people. But when we were starting off, we had people coming around. They were like, "Oh, why are you doing this? Why are you giving while during the hard times? Everyone's in a difficult situation. Why would you do this for us?" And then this actually touched some people, some like little cart owners or like people who sells fruits from their cars. So these people actually donated some fruits to us, even though they weren't Christian or they didn't know what was happening. They were like, "This is a good cause. We would like to help." And there was also small churches in the countryside in north of Thailand, in a province called Buriram and Korat. But these churches also heard about our mission, so they decided to drive down 8 hours early in the morning just to come help us and volunteer. Wow. And then since these people live in the countryside and they're farmers, they decide to bring some rice, big bags of rice as offering. So we were getting our rice and fruits from these people. And then non-Christians who actually see this mission, they're touched. So some people will come up with an envelope with $2 in it. They're like, here's for the cause. Or like when some people come and receive the food, they would hand money to the person who gives. It's like, hey, this is to help you guys out as well. So we're getting all these little donations from different people. And actually, a shout out to Pam, who actually connected us. I was actually in touch with Pam throughout this whole food missions when it started. And she was actually really touched and she wanted to get involved. So I've been sending her weekly updates and she helped sponsors from Holland, Michigan, and she actually helped us get. She actually helped us buy two rice cookers, two huge rice cookers, as well. So, yeah,
You were talking about my dear friend and sister Pam Van Putten, who I have
Yes.
been doing music with since college. She's got an amazing, beautiful singing voice, and she is the one. She's now the international student coordinator, I think, or something like that at Hope College, and she is just a saint. And I am thrilled to hear that you've been sharing this story with her. That's awesome. I hope Pam gets to see this podcast because we love you a lot. So today was Wednesday. So this was the day that the people came. How did it go today?
yeah, it went very well as usual. Busy and hot. It's funny because every week we have different groups of people helping us. So we started off focusing on only two little villages surrounding the district surrounding us, and then this actually started spreading all the way out into the deeper, bigger villages out there. So we started having teams that would come and grab a box of around 50 lunch boxes, drive out in their motorcycles to give out in that community as well. So yeah, we get, and people who actually see this, they were touched. So even policemen, Thai police would come and help us, and the village leaders, each village has a leader, and the district leaders would always come pay us a visit and see how it's going, and then they would always support us. They would like bring cones. They would bring cones for us to set up, and they would sometimes send people to help volunteer as well.
Well, if you're wondering as you watch this podcast and as you meet Hajin today, what is God asking you to do in these days that we live in? Whether it's if you're living in a neighborhood where there's been protests or riots, what's God calling the church to do? If you're living in an area where people have exhausted their unemployment, there may not be another stimulus check, they may be out of work again. What is God calling you if you are part of the church, or even if you're not? Maybe God's going to use you anyway. But Hajin, your story and what you guys are doing in the heat, in the pragmatic application of getting the cookers and collecting the rice and working with the people, man, I just, I don't even know how to say it, but may God's blessings just pour on you and your family and your church. And you guys are showing the world right now what it means to be the Church of Jesus Christ. And I'm so glad you're willing to share your story with us on No Shame today. I'm really proud of you.
There's this two main stories I want to share that I've seen from our food missions. So one result from our food mission is this one guy called Wisan, who actually came to our church because he received this lunchbox. So it's not just the food that he received, but through this action, he saw God's love. That's when he knew that there can be real love in this world. Because in his life, he was actually cheated. He was actually cheated by his wife, and he got everything taken away from him. So now he lives in a huge debt, and he works as a security guard now. And so life has been pretty low for him, and he just didn't know the meaning of love until he actually received this lunchbox. And so, you know how we attach these stickers to our lunchbox saying God is love, and he actually kept his every week. But the funny thing is, he wanted to come to our church, but we didn't actually put our church address there. So he was walking around trying to find our church until he actually found us. And he was really happy to actually learn who Jesus Christ is and who God is, and actually to accept faith. So he actually was diagnosed with a skin disease for 4 years before he started coming to church. And then through our church, the first week he came to our church, our pastor prayed for him, and a miracle happened. Around his tummy, he had all these rashes that were coming up to his body. But after the prayer, the next week he came back and all the rash had subsided. and it was dry. Like the skin was starting to be clear. So that's when he knew that he's the witness of a miracle. So he was telling all the people in the village saying, hey, God is real. Jesus is real. Look, I'm the witness. Look at my scars. I mean, like, he was really happy, and now he's a firm believer, and he comes to our church every week.
Wow. Wow. Fruit of the ministry is beyond what we would ever know, and how God partners with, the obedience and the faithfulness of your church to do this work. And now you see the story like we saw. That's awesome. That's beautiful, man.
And another story I wanted to share with you was about a guy called Suchat. He actually lives 5 miles away from where we are actually doing the food missions. But my mom and dad were actually able to go there because you know how every village there is a person who takes care of the disabled person? They're in charge. But this person wanted my parents to go all the way to this another small village 5 miles away. And it's only accessible through a motorcycle or sometimes small cars because it's like kind of cut off from the main road. So that's where they went, and they met this guy called Suchat who has been lying in bed for 3 years because of a brain tumor. And they never actually went to the hospital because the doctor said there's only a 50% of surviving after a surgery. But this guy Suchat was lying in bed, and there are my parents who goes in to give this warm box of food to him. And the moment my parents saw them, they started preaching the gospel and then telling him how Jesus can do miracles. Jesus can heal him. And this guy Suchat actually believed. He started believing, and at that point, another miracle happened. He actually stood up and sat on the bed, whereas he was lying in the bed for 3 years. So sitting up himself was actually a miracle to his wife. And the dog that he was actually taking care of, the dog was surprised, so it started barking because the dog has seen its owner in bed for 3 years, and now the dog sees the owner moving. So the dog started barking and it was just filled with joy, and the miracle happened, and they right away accepted Jesus Christ.
Wow, Suchad and Wisan. The stories in the Bible. Our podcast last week, Hajin, was with Tim Mahoney, who's been doing a film on the Red Sea miracle. And I had my conversation with Tim, and he's been spending the last 20 years of his life interviewing and researching and looking at the stories from the Exodus and finding evidence and all these things. And at the crux of it is this question is, does God really do miracles? Does God still do miracles? Was there a Red Sea parting that was miraculous, or could it have just been the conditions of the wind that day that blew a shallow lake apart? I mean, there's different theories on these things. But when God reaches through and does something by the very nature of the word supernatural, it's something that would happen that's outside of the natural laws, the natural causes, the things that we are used to seeing that repeat themselves. So, to hear in our day these two stories that are connected to the body in terms of the work of the church was essential to this. This just didn't happen out of nowhere. This happened out of the faithfulness of you guys. And with San, to see that skin disease clear up and to see Suched sit up in bed after 3 years. I mean, it seems to me that these are the kind of testimonies that people should pay attention to as they're trying to evaluate for themselves, is God real? Does God care? Is this just a fairy tale, or is this the creator? So when you see these little examples, and they're not little to the people involved, I don't know why I use the word little. I mean, they're amazing miracles. but they're specific, and they're in one particular place, in one particular life. But to me, those are evidences of something so huge, which is the God of the universe, who has not abandoned his people. And if people want to get involved, is there a way? Do you have a website, or is there any way people can get involved with what you're doing?
They can actually send me an email, because all we're doing is sending out weekly updates on our food missions. So if they want to get involved, they can send me an email to hajin.jang@hope.edu. Or if Pam can probably act as a bridge as well. And I can always send them a weekly update on our food missions as well.
That's Hajin, Hajin.jang, Jang, at hope.edu.
Yes.
And, I'm a little bit sad for your folks, because you're planning to come back to school this fall.
Yes, I'm still unsure of that plans.
Okay.
Hopefully, I will be able to find a flight ticket that's at a reasonable price, and have America accept me coming in. Yep.
Well, it's great what you're doing. Thank you for joining us. I know it's late at night. You've had a long day in the heat. But I appreciate you sharing the story, my friend. And I just pray for a blessing on your church and all the hungry people of the world, that somehow God provides loaves and fishes and gets us through this crisis time. And maybe even more than that, that on the other end we come out as better people. We learn what it means to share, we learn what it means to be humble, and we learn what it means to love in Jesus' name, which you guys are doing. Tell your parents, please, for us, that we appreciate them and we thank them for all they've done and for producing you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, I hope to see you soon. If you come back to America, we definitely will see each other. And if you stay there,
Yes.
God's using you, no doubt, right now in Thailand in a huge way. They need the technology that you've brought them, the energy, the health, the strength. I think your perspective has probably been extraordinarily helpful through this whole thing, and your connections. So, man, just know God's using you in a huge way, my friend. And it's beautiful to see, but it sounds really hot. Is your room air conditioned? I think I see one behind you.
Yes, it is air conditioned, but I use a fan daily. So
Yeah. All right. Hajin Jang, thanks for joining us on No Shame.
thank you very much.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid. No shame of the gospel of His name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid.
No Shame is a weekly podcast where John Grooters discusses life at the intersection of faith and culture with all kinds of interesting and inspiring guests. Subscribe to the podcast today by going to johngrooters.com, select the podcast tab, and hit subscribe. Don't miss any of these life-giving conversations.